Okay, so here we start in the prologue of Zecharia Sitchin's The 12th Planet. And again, so we're going to continue on with our analysis of the book. So right off the bat, in the beginning, the paragraph up here, he basically starts out, and I'm almost going to read this word for word, is basically at a time when our own astronauts now have landed on the moon, is it no longer possible for us, or impossible for us to believe that a civilization more advanced than ours, than our own, has also come and landed on our planet? So in other words, if we can go land somewhere else, why is it so implausible to believe that another race of more advanced beings have landed here on our planet before? And then he basically talks about how there's a number of popular writers that have speculated that some of our Earth's artifacts, like the pyramids, for example, don't make sense on how civilization could have built those that far back with the knowledge that they had. And so as time has gone by, people, of course, have tried to come up with explanations about how they could have done it, using, sand and erosion with water or some kind of pulley system or whatnot. But the point being is that we have, for a long time, as a society, believed that that we were clueless how they could have built something of such enormous scale. What if, many people have speculated, those things were created by somebody with more advanced technology? And in fact, there are, and this is the thing that really is the kicker, I already know from the studies that I have done before coming into this book, that there are ancient writings that talk about how certain things like Solomon's Temple, for example, were built by so-called demons or angels, oddly enough. I mean, why would a holy temple be built by demons? But there are ancient texts that actually state that these other beings created some of our structures. It's kind of getting to a side tangent, but the point being is that this is something that a lot of people have been seeing evidence of. And the question comes, well, is it possible? Is it really absurd to view this way? And in fact, as I had stated in the introduction to the whole channel, by definition, the biblical story of a god, an Elohim, and again, and I'm going to pause here for a second and talk about Elohim, because in the Hebrew Bible, Elohim, which is a word used for God multiple times, is a plural word that means mighty ones, essentially. Okay, and so again, and as I mentioned in the video before this, Christians who go in to interpret the Bible see a word like Elohim and they go, okay, I already know there's a God, and I already know that this God is a plurality of three beings, but yet is still one being. And so therefore, when I see a word like Elohim, I'm not going to force myself to list it as a plural word in the English, because I now understand this concept that modern theology has come up with called a plurality of unity. And therefore, when God is talking, I don't have to always use words like "let us make man in our image." I can make some singular pronouns, because we know that really three gods is one God. And again, this is done because modern theology has already made the conclusion that the Trinity is no longer a questionable doctrine. It is in fact now fact. And so because of that, we can go back now and take plural words like Elohim, which means mighty ones, and state that this refers to one being talking. But again, well, as I had also mentioned in the previous thing, a friend and I were reading the scriptures and trying to learn things, and said, well, let's read these verses instead of saying God here, whatever. Let's say Elohim. So the mighty ones came, and the mighty ones did this, and the mighty ones did that, and the mighty ones told us this, and so on. And it changes a lot of possibilities. And in fact, just as he's saying right here, does it not make sense that what the Bible really is saying in the Hebrew is that some mighty ones, and mighty meaning, again, if for example, if there's a superior race to ourselves, would we not consider them mighty compared to us? We would consider these people who have way better advanced technology and civilization and understanding of the universe. We would consider somebody like that to be mighty by our primitive standards, if we were running around in rocks and caves and barely covering ourselves with with animal skins. And so you would consider somebody that has all this advanced knowledge to be mighty and revere them. And so in a way, again, it shouldn't be really implausible to suggest that the ancient texts who are talking about in various different languages a group of mighty ones, of beings that are far beyond our own advancement in technology, came to this planet and did things, taught us secrets of the universe and whatnot. And so again, all the book is starting out trying to say is it really ridiculous for us to speculate for the next 6 books that there was a possibility that an advanced race came to this planet many thousands of years ago, long years ago, and created life on this planet, or twisted life on this planet, or whatever, or taught men who were already here, whatever you want to take from your standard, taught us things that we didn't know before. Is that really a ridiculous concept? And I agree with him, it's not a ridiculous concept. And in fact, that's what kind of excites me about this, is that, okay, let's put away our biases for a minute, and let's accept the possibility that the Bible even is all they're really saying is that a group of superior beings came to this planet, and then what? And then he says, like in paragraph 2, like I was just saying, ancient peoples themselves believed that superior beings from the heavens, from up in the sky, came down to earth. And if they did come down, then where did they come from? Where did they go? Are they going to come back? These are the questions that get asked. And again, one of the things that I had always asked myself when I was even studying the Bible is, well, if God didn't exist, how would ancient people come up with the concept of God in the first place? What would make an ancient person say, "Oh, I bet you that star or that planet up there in the sky is actually really some superior being who's in charge of it"? Where would you come up with that? It's such an illogical jump that if you don't already have first a basis to believe that, then where would that come from? In other words, there are people who are saying that, well, the Bible is all purely myth and these people just made it up. They looked up into the skies and decided there must be gods up there. And again, I don't know if I'm putting this in the right words, but how would a person make the jump about gods if you have no concept of God in the first place? What would make you think that there's a superior being that's in charge of a planet up there if you had never heard anything like that? And in fact, what I tend to believe is what happened was, again, a lot of the ancient cultures, most of the ancient cultures, view the gods as having come from the stars, and that various planets up there actually represent gods. That Saturn is a god, and the sun is a god, and the moon is a god, and whatnot. And then it became, well, okay, if they had interactions with a superior race, and if that superior race went up into their skies and then disappeared, and all they saw after they left, for example, in the night sky, was a bunch of twinkling stars up there, to me it makes a much more logical conclusion that they would look up and go, I don't know where the gods came from, but they went back there. And so up in the sky, wherever that is, that's where the gods came from. That's a logical conclusion. But I don't know if you're seeing the subtle difference what I'm trying to make, which is that they didn't just sit there every day of their life doing regular things on Earth and then one day look up in the skies and said, I bet you there's a bunch of gods up there. That to me was kind of ridiculous. I was like, that can't be how we came up with the concept of God. Instead, what had to have happened is there was an interaction with a race of beings who were here, who went back up into the skies in front of people's eyes, and they saw it, and therefore started to worship the stars and the sun and the moon and whatnot, because that's the best they knew where they went. They went back up to those, they're like, oh, I see this giant ball. He must be going up to this ball up there because that's the only thing I really see in the sky. And even the Bible starts out with basically the admonition, or the warning, I should say, to human beings not to worship the stars and the sun and the moon and these things. Don't look up there, essentially, and worship them as gods per se, because in the biblical view, in the Hebrew view, for them there was but only one God. There was Yahweh of the Hebrews, and so what he didn't want them to do was to worship all the other gods that came from the stars. And again, one of the things, again, getting a little ahead of ourselves, is my buddy and I realized that the Bible actually, more than saying that more than the belief that's today, which is that there are no other gods, the Bible actually makes it clear there are other gods. All it really is saying is, you shall have no other of those gods before me. You shall not worship and revere any of those other gods more than me, because I am the supreme God, says Yahweh. But it's not really excluding the possibility of God. It wasn't until the New Testament when there's some verses, for example, that Paul wrote about, well, we know that there are really no gods. But yet there are also verses that say, for there are many gods, and we know that there are many gods, but for us, there is but one God. And that's a biblical verse as well. That we know that there are many gods, but for us, there is but one God. And then again, so what I'm basically saying is that even in the Bible itself, if you kind of open up your mind, it talks about other gods. It talks about Israel going and worshiping Astarte and Tammuz and Marduk and the other gods of the time. And it doesn't say it in such a way of, oh, well, those were all fake gods and they were worshiping just a statue. No, it's like they turned to worshiping this god, and then they turned to worshiping this god, and I want them to return to worshiping this god. And again, it doesn't make the distinction that some of them are fake and only one of them is real. It's more of the those ones aren't in charge. I'm in charge, so you should be listening to me. And in fact, as a preview of what's coming up in this book, that's essentially what he's going to show. He's going to show that during parts in our history, his argument is that during parts in our history, the gods, who were numerous and had a rulership, pantheon of gods ruling things, there was times at each one of their stages in which one god was primarily in charge. And so the argument might be made, before we get into his argument in particular, is that again, for the Hebrew people, the God that was in charge was Yahweh, and that's who they were supposed to listen to. Now it's become, of course, the modern theology has become that there has always been only one God. All the other gods are fake. There are no other gods. There has always been only one God, and if you don't worship that God, then you're toast. But it's not really by definition the actual way it's written in the Bible, in my opinion. Now, where it got kind of exciting for me was when I was reading here where he basically says, well, this book is going to propose to answer these questions. Who are they? Where did they come from? Where did they go? And specifically says, we will identify the planet from which these astronauts came, lay bare the ancient reports of the celestial collision, which showed that an intruding planet was captured into our sun's orbit, and show how all the other ancient religions based their on the knowledge of veneration of this 12th member of our solar system. And I got kind of excited. I was like, okay, so this guy is going to claim not only to try and lay down evidence that there are other quote-unquote gods, but he claims he's going to tell you exactly what the name of their planet is, where they came from, what the orbit is of their planet, when it's going to be coming back, the planet, for example, passing through our solar system again. And that kind of excited me. And in fact, it does excite me still. I mean, reading his evidence and knowing what's coming up in his book, and then combining it with what modern science now understands, it's pretty exciting stuff. But again, I'm jumping a little ahead. And so for now, we're just going to kind of wrap up at that moment as an ending point for this video. Is just that, we're going into the prologue. The author's asking us to accept the possibility that our planet was visited by what we would call astronauts, a race of beings from another planet, not indigenous to Earth, who came here and landed on our planet thousands of years ago, perhaps from a planet that actually got captured and became part of our solar system and got captured into our sun's orbit, from another neighboring galaxy, for example, passed through our galaxy and basically gave another race, for example, the ability to come into our solar system, find life, land on our planet, and whatnot. And so it sounds perhaps absurd for some people, but I think that there's going to be a good case to be made for it. And that's all we're really asking right now is let's look through the lens of what the Bible says, what we actually already kind of understand in our terminology, and what things like the secret societies and different groups throughout history have hidden knowledge, basically saying the same thing, that we were visited by other people, and there's been secrets told and lies told to the population to hide the fact that we were visited by a superior race that came through our galaxy and will be returning. But what are they? Who are they? Where did they come from? That's what we're going to get into.